Call a meeting to order.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Monday, September 10th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Sikora. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is a report of the General Manager of Planning and Development. It pertains to the regional context statement preparation, and it's a report for information.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. My question is not so much with respect to the regional context statement, but before we start this process, just wondering if staff can confirm for us that all those amendments that got through with Metro Vancouver as we were expecting.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, through the chair. Good question. I know that with the agreement last year, there was a number of undertakings on their part. Some have been done, some they're still working on, some they're rethinking. So we will be coming forward with information to I believe the Mayor and Councillor Reid as the Metro Vancouver Board reps on one of those items to an upcoming board meeting. There's something working its way through the system right now.
Okay, thank you.
But we'll make note of that, and perhaps when we come forward with the first RCS report, we can give you an update on those particular items if you wish.
Sure, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Reid.
Just I will speak for, I guess, you and I, but we have heard no discussion to the contrary of anything that we have put through. I think it's just taking its time, along with all the other cities, to get through the workload.
But it perhaps is indicative of the challenges of the regional growth strategy context.
Yes.
That an amendment that has nobody against it and is slam dunk has been 6 months before their process. So. Anybody else? No. Thank you very much. The motion is to receive. We haven't voted on it, though. The motion is to receive. Yeah, we haven't voted on it yet, though. All in favor?
I move for information.
Yes, I know. It's your motion to receive.
I want to receive the information.
Well, that's what the motion is.
Thank you.
You moved the motion.
I'll move it.
You already have moved it. Okay. Okay.
That's what I figured.
Okay. The motion is to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Clerk, save us.
We don't record the movers in minutes for Council and Committee. Report number 2 is a report of the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works. It pertains to Crosstown Bicycle Route, and it's a status report number 2, in fact, and it's a report for information.
Moved by Reid, seconded by Reamer. Councillor Reid.
Where is our engineer?
He's stuck in traffic, probably.
Okay, is there anyone here?
Catherine Mahoric is here, the manager of transportation.
Okay. So, the things I hate the most about engineering are the little bulges that you put at the end of the blocks that prevent people from parking nicely and all that stuff, but you love them, so I guess I'm stuck with loving them. If you have a bike route, oh, here he comes, just in time. If you have a bike route that's going along one of those roads and you have a little bulge at one end of the block and a little bulge at the other, does that mean that the bike rider has to come out into the one lane of traffic going by the bulge?
Through the chair. In response to that, there are a couple of options for a cyclist. In some locations, we wouldn't put a bulge. If there's like a bike lane, you would not have a bulge in that area. On Poirier, which has a bike route down it, we've purposely kept the bulges actually slightly narrower so that a cyclist who wanted to stay on the road would just simply travel through the space. So the width of the car travel lane through the area with the bulge is wider than what a normal travel lane would be. And then there are other examples where you would actually construct area for a cyclist to traverse the bulge. So there's different ways of handling it under different conditions.
Okay. well, then I'll have to like bike lanes because I don't like the bulges. So if I like bike lanes and I get more of them, I'll have less bulges, which could work. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Reid just hit the nail on the head. Those bulges, I guess they cost quite a bit of money to put in. They're not cheap, but you know what? They're plenty ugly. For two reasons. For parking and getting out the parking spot, if you were, say, the first car there, you got to swerve all the way into the oncoming traffic to get your car on the road. If it was no bulge, it'd be a lot easier. But also these bulges are I think they're very expensive to maintain, and I'll tell you something. They're very, as far as I'm concerned, they're a waste of taxpayers' money. Guarantee you, because there's no value. I know here by Glen School, there's all kinds of weeds growing in them and everything else, and they're very unsightly. I don't know why those bulges are there to begin with. What's the purpose?
Ms. Mohoric.
Through the chair. Just commenting on a curb bulge from a couple of perspectives. One is that with respect to parking, the actual physical space that the bulge occupies is in the area that under our streets and parking bylaw, parking's prohibited. So under our street and traffic bylaw, there's about 6 meters or so near stop signs and other areas near intersections where you're never allowed to park. And so the bulge, we place the bulge at that location, which is in a space that you wouldn't be allowed to park.
I totally agree with that. I realize that. But what I'm trying to say is that bulge, if you were to try and park in there and you had room for one car to park, beyond the bulge, you'd have a hard time getting in there with a car because of the bulge.
So the angle that we use to get in and out of the bulge, you're saying, is difficult to maneuver?
Very, very difficult. Try it.
Okay.
And see for yourself. The fact is, I think I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I've driven the city, I look at those bulges, and I'll tell you, the people that are trying to maneuver to park in there have a great problem to park. They got a great problem getting out of there to get onto the oncoming traffic, and you're almost going into the other lane to try and get out. And it's not a safe thing, and I don't know why the engineering has got this practice of bulges for some reason.
Through the chair, certainly we can review the standards around the angles of entry and exit and take into consideration Councillor Sikura's comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I'm just looking at attachment 2B, trying to figure out what is actually happening here on Johnson. This is between Packard and Conley Crescent. I guess it's down by the TD Bank there. And I'm just wondering, are we losing an entire lane there? Is that what's happening? The southbound lane just below Packard, is that a lane coming out, or is it cement going in there? What is that marking that I'm looking at there?
Through the chair, the marking that you're looking at, we have a very, very, very long southbound right turn lane. So the area that we're looking at is we need to ensure that we keep enough room for southbound motorists to make a right turn from Johnson Street onto the Barnett. So there's been analysis done to look at the volumes both now and into the future to understand, well, what length of left turn bay or southbound right turn bay do we actually need? And the length that's there is far longer than what we need for operational purposes. And so we're looking at filling in that southbound right turn lane, just a portion of it, the north portion, to just south of Connolly, and then we would leave the rest of the southbound right turn lane alone, which is what you need for operational purposes. So there's a bit of an area where you would fill it in. Part of the benefits in this area is there is some trees and infrastructure that actually exists out there. There's a transit bus stop, so there's a variety of pieces of street furniture in that area, and we want to make sure that everybody's needs are met through this space.
But So if you were coming along and you're just going south and you've just passed Packard, previously you could get into the right-hand turn lane if you wanted to go in into the gas station there or into the TD Bank. So what happens now is you're going to have to stay in the main flow of traffic and then go around this structure or whatever it's going to be, pavement or cement or whatever. Is that correct?
Yeah, we just simply would extend the curb line south that exists at Packard directly down, and you'd make a right turn into the driveways from that lane.
Right, but it means that you now have to sit in the through traffic, the two through traffic lanes, instead of being able to go down the side to make the right-hand turn into the bank. So you're basically, we're putting traffic that's trying to turn right is now going to be in with the mainstream traffic. Is that correct?
That is correct, but the numbers of those vehicles doing that movement is very low. The other issue that we're trying to address in this area is that we've had safety concerns raised around traffic turning left out of Connolly and left into Connolly. You have 3 travel lanes and there's been T-bone type collisions in that area. So there was a safety review that traffic operations did, and part of the findings in this is that this configuration would actually reduce because you'd go from 3 to 2 lanes through Connolly, it would actually improve the sightline, the ability to manage that intersection.
But because of the bulge on the south side of Connolly, a car coming out of Connolly wanting to make a right-hand turn now has to go out into the mainstream traffic to make its right-hand turn. I mean, if you'd left the cement in on the north side, that would protect a buffer for cars making a right-hand turn, but it seems like we've defeated the purpose of providing sort of an easy exit, because they now have to come swing out into the main traffic to get out of there.
For illustrative purposes, this is functional level design. What would actually be happening in this area is a very much smoother transition. There won't be any bulges, in other words, on this. We would actually just bring the curb line and do a smooth the line. So functional planning, we're not detailing out what the curb alignment would look like, the finished product. It's just a graphic. Right. And so I apologize if it looks like there's a curb bulge, because that's not what we would do at that location.
I'm just concerned about, and I don't pretend to be a traffic engineer, but as somebody who drives that stretch and knows how traffic can back up, and I'm thinking then when we start to see construction happening up Pine Tree, I can see more and more of our traffic switching over to Johnson during the SkyTrain construction, and I just think that anything that takes away lanes is going to slow traffic or cause issues. You know, and to me, I know in my past days as traffic calming that bulges and curb extension things are used as a form of traffic calming, and I realize that's not what we're trying to achieve here, but we've said that we weren't going to do those type of measures on arterial and collector roads. So I just caution that what we're doing is going to be perceived to have been taken away driving lanes, and that may come back at us, especially when we start to see congestion over on Pine Tree during the construction.
Yeah, to address that, this particular part of the project is in the 5-year capital plan, but intended for 2016, which would be post-evergreen construction time to recognize the pressure that will be on the city streets during the next few years.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got 2 comments to make. I did want to rise to the defense of the curb extension. In some places, I think there are times when we might overuse them, but I don't know that this is one. And I thank Councillor Hodge actually for raising this one, because I've got a similar concern only because I've been there, and it's 2 lanes. The 2 through lanes can get backed up well past the South Mall access. And therefore, what you'd end up with, if we essentially are trying to leave it as only 2 southbound lanes, you'll either end up with some people trying to, well, the most likely solution would be some people who currently take the right turn lane because they want to turn right on Barnett will be stuck in traffic, and and therefore will actually end up backing up people longer when their goal was to turn right. The last thing on earth we want to do is have anyone turning right on Connolly because they can't get to the right turn lane that they want to, and I've seen people take Connolly as a shortcut, and it's not a drivable road. So I'm a little bit hesitant to with the idea of eliminating some of that right turn capacity to get some of those cars off the 2 through lanes when they don't need to be there. They don't need to sit there and wait for a light or 2 lights before they can get access to the right turn lane. All they wanted to do was turn right.
I agree, I'm there every day.
As for the curb extension, though, the curb extension that I have trouble with, and I don't see any on this map, but I suspect you've got one somewhere, is at a bus stop. I don't know why when we get to the bike lane, which is the 3 feet next to the curb on Guilford, for example, you eliminate the bike lane because you've got a bus stop. So you make the bikes move out because for some reason the curb extends at the bus stop, where you'd think the correct way to do it would be to sink the curb in so that the bus can can get out of traffic's way. And so I always have that question, and I realize it's not necessarily specific to the proposal that's before us, but why do we extend the curb and essentially allow the curb to come out to where the bus is now parked in the lane of traffic instead of the reverse?
TransLink produces transit design guidelines, which in general the cities do try to follow, that provides guidance around that. From a transit perspective, operationally, they would prefer not to use bays, and so you see actually limited use of them across the Lower Mainland. When you combine bike lanes and transit stops, there's some recommended good practices that both the cycling folks and the transit folks have come to agreement on, and part of it is around sharing space. It is a difficult situation to be behind a bus, but they both need to use that space, and this is sort of an example of multimodalism, and how do you actually combine and balance and address the trade-offs between the different modes. So I just wanted to explain, though, that we are following best practices around some of these initiatives, and it's a bit of an evolving science right now. So thank you for your comment.
And I'll rise one more time in defense of the curb extension where it can be legitimate as a way of shortening the crosswalk, for example, as a way of making it so we don't have to have a bylaw enforcement officer to tell people you're not allowed to stop here because I'm only stopping for 5 minutes, I'm just going in for a coffee. So take away the parking space rather than leave the parking space but put up a sign and then try to get a bylaw enforcement officer to enforce it. So I'm all for curb extensions. I'm not sure I like the one at Connolly, though. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, actually, since our bus driving expert is not here today, it's been my understanding that those extensions serve 2 purposes from TransLink's point of view, and one is that it takes away that always difficult time when the bus is trying to get back into traffic, and it slows the buses up. And 2, quite often there's not enough room to build a base. So what happens is the bus is kind of half out of the right travel lane and half in, and people try to slide by. And you get 2 cars trying to go by in 1.5 lanes, and that's really dangerous. So when the curb comes out like that bulge, that sends a very strong message: don't sneak by. Only 1 lane is supposed to get through. It's a different issue entirely, of course.
It also sends a strong message to the cyclist.
The cyclist, it's a different issue.
He has to move into what's called the fast lane, and go 20 kilometers an hour, or wait.
Yeah. And like other cars have to do. The cyclist,
other cars can slip into the fast lane and not worry about it, right? So.
Yeah. So it's a different issue entirely for the cyclist. It's designed more, I think, for cars and buses, not the cyclist, without a doubt. And the curb extensions, whose virtues you just finished extolling, Mr. Mayor, also send a very strong visual signal to the motorists that you're going to have to slow down there. People just naturally, when they see the road narrowing, they're going to slow down, and that's a good thing. So without speed bumps, and those have been tried before, and people hate those, these curb extensions, when they narrow the intersections, to me that's a safety issue, shorter crosswalks, and for the pedestrians, and also it really does slow people down. And one other question here on 2B, since we're talking about 2B, and no references to Hamlet. you mentioned Packard Avenue, and actually I don't know where Packard Avenue is, and I can't find it on the map.
It's the topmost street there.
Just before the turn into the mall.
Before the turn into the mall. Is it on the map, too?
At the top of, okay.
I can't see it. Oh, it's there. It's not labeled, though?
That's right. It goes into Ducker, into the senior.
Okay, but it's not labeled there. Okay, good. Okay, thanks. Now it all comes together. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, what are we trying to accomplish with those bulges? What is it? No, you know, I mean, we hear all different versions, but what is the engineering department trying to, you know, if you're trying to slow up the traffic, then put a lower speed limit on there and have it enforced. But what is it that you're trying to accomplish with those bulges?
Are you trying to slow the traffic below 50 kilometers an hour, or are you just trying to slow it below 70
some other reason?
By labeling it to 50?
Through the chair. The example on Poirier Street was brought forward as we've had speeding complaints along Poirier Street. And so in looking at this area with the type of road it is and the amount of recreational facilities and wanting to encourage children to be able to get to and from without being driven to the area, having curb bulges to shorten pedestrian crossing distances, that's one. So we have them where we have crosswalks. That's where they've been installed through this corridor, is at the crosswalks. And yes, Councillor O'Neill was pretty accurate about the visual cue to a motorist on approaching. Whenever a motorist approaches something that's slightly narrower, their instinct is to slow down. So it actually promotes a reduction of speed if landscaping features can be included on them, such as street trees, which on the Poirier Street will be mounted into the curb bulges. The landscaping also is a further help to give a visual cue to drivers to slow down. So they are more passive forms of speed management than using speed humps or vertical deflection movements, and so are supported. The Poirier project is a mixture of bundled projects, which is pavement management, a bit of speed reduction because of the complaints that we heard, as well as providing a facility for cyclists. So it's not just how you do a cycle route, is not that. And so what you'll see on this example, where we're using the crosstown bike route to add cycling facilities through some of our more busier intersections, we don't use curb bulges in these examples. We're using other mechanisms, paint and sign, and some curb changes to provide the clarification. It's really around clarifying where each mode travels. That's what we're really trying to do through this.
I'd like to take you away from Poirier Street, because you seem to be talking about Poirier Street, what's happening there. I'm talking about other areas of the city where you have these bulges. What are you trying to accomplish there?
In other areas of the city, for example, on some streets, we're putting high-density development in that street parking is something that's desired. So a mechanism to address a walkable environment in a high-density, or like around the rapid transit stations, the curb bulges will again be put in for pedestrians primarily, because it improves visibility. One of the big challenges when you allow on-street parking, sometimes people park too close to the intersections and you can't actually see a pedestrian waiting in a crosswalk, especially little short ones. And so having a curb bulge allows someone to stand out farther into the intersection so that they can be seen. So it's really a safety measure, and they're well used, and there's documented research on the benefits of using them for a variety of reasons. So
I would suggest to you that instead of putting this expensive bulge, if cars are parking too close to the intersection, they put a sign, no parking beyond this point, and it would be cheaper and easier. If I want to be in a curb, if I'm the last car on a curb and I want to make a right-hand turn right just where I parked, make a right-hand turn, I have to come out all the way around that bulge, get around almost the oncoming traffic, and then make a right-hand turn. Where does that make any sense? I'd suggest to you it doesn't make any sense.
Your Worship, just a couple of quick comments, please. Thank you. We can certainly do a review of generally where do we and where do we not pursue curb bulges in a broad context of the city of Coquitlam, not just not just bicycle facilities or what have you. We can take on that body of work and bring it back for a general review. But more particularly with the item that is on the table now, there have been expressed concerns on certain of the routes on Johnson Street. What's before you are really detailed but still high-level concepts. They are not exactly what is necessarily going to be built, and we hear the concerns, and I can assure you that before anything is built and before any detailed designs are completed, we would come back and have a further discussion with Council on these issues.
And when you mentioned that, with these bulges, it slows up traffic, well, I'll suggest to you that if there's a car parked right next to the bulge, they can't see that bulge. So how are you going to slow up? You can't see it. It's not wider than a car.
Well, they are.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I think we had just a good discussion in general about bulges and the benefits to them, and I agree, and Councillor O'Neill is bang on his comments about shortening distances for pedestrians, and they have a number of benefits, and they also have great benefits in the area of traffic calming, and I certainly prefer them to the vertical deflection and some of the other things that we're doing. I guess my original question is I'm not sure that this is a place to use that particular thing, and I'm glad to hear the comment from Mr. Suzak that it's going to be looked at, because my concerns would be that is a busy corridor. It's getting busier, and I think we have to be very careful at what we do there, and it's also going to have a mental impact on people, that even if it doesn't slow traffic, I think people may, when they get stuck in traffic, think it's because the city went and put this in. So I think there's going to be some psychological issues, just because as traffic increases, the general perception is as traffic increases, you increase pavement. And I know that's not always the case and all the reasons, but I think that this is going to be a very sensitive area with the public, and anything that we do there that it gives the perception that we're slowing traffic, I think is going to come back at us. So I'm happy to hear this is sort of going to be reviewed, and the overall plan I'm liking, but I really do have some concerns just in that 1-2 block stretch there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Well, I guess Councillor Hodge said it all as far as Johnson's concerned, because there's four access and egresses there. I mean, that's the street I come down every day, so to be able to get out of the traveled stream and over to the right makes sense. It just doesn't, because otherwise you can sit there for 2 or 3 lights, and people trying to come out of Connolly and turn left, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So I don't agree with bulges and things like that at all on arterial roads. I just think they're wrong, or collector roads. But more importantly, this report is just for receipt, because if it's for approval, I won't vote for it, Your Worship. It says receive. If it's just to receive for information, I'm happy to do that, but if it's for approval, I have no intention of approving it.
Well, I would actually suggest that since one of the avid cyclists of council is not here today, we would probably be better off to have a more thorough discussion at some later point related to this issue anyway, but it is only to receive. Is there a motion yet?
So moved.
It has already previously been
Receiving.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
It's for receiving.
Next item 4, is a report of the General Manager's strategic initiatives pertaining to the Coquitlam City Centre Library project. This is update number 2. Again, it's a report for information.
This is also a motion to receive. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I think it's a good report. I think it's reading through the report and seeing that we're not going to have a lease agreement with a coffee shop, and I think that's unfortunate. I think it's an ideal place for a coffee shop, and I'd certainly like to see that happen sometime in the future. But I do have concerns over the use of that space. I don't remember.
Right? I don't remember approving that.
No. That's the motion here, or it's in the conclusion.
Councillor Reid, did you have a question?
Yeah, well,
I'm just reading from the report on page 3.
I don't remember approving that it be used for the Evergreen Transit Office. I don't remember that, so I'm opposed to it.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that, you know, I appreciate we're not going to be able to have a coffee shop there, and that would be, I think, an excellent place for a coffee shop. But in the interim, I would have preferred a public use of that space. It's going to be prime corner space, and I think it's just unfortunate that we're not going to have it. But I appreciate that staff worked to make that a reality, and I hope that we will in the future see a coffee shop there. But in the interim, I would have preferred to see public use of that space, either for arts displays or heritage displays or something. But other than that, I'll support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that staff put a lot of effort into it, and I personally believe that at some point in the near future it will be a coffee shop, because it's such an obvious location exactly across the street from a SkyTrain station. So I don't have any. I have lots of confidence for the future, but at this point we couldn't get one, I guess. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, I note that while it is disappointing that the opening date has been pushed back yet again, is now likely to be open around November 13th. Looking on the bright side of it, we can say that this is an early Christmas present for Coquitlam. All I wanted to say. November.
Or a late Halloween present. Thank you very much.
Glass half full.
Exactly. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much to staff for this update. The coffee shop is disappointing. However, I have every confidence that after the Evergreen line goes in 2016, there'll be great interest out there with respect to a coffee shop. And I like the fact that our Evergreen line team can use that space up until then, and it's kind of just a natural progression. So I fully support that aspect of it. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing none others, the motion is to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Mr. Chair, that's the last formal item on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora has moved adjournment. Councillor O'Neill has seconded it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.